Welcome, everyone. Good to see you. Just waiting for the stream to start here. Thank you for your patience. Many times when we come to Career Happy Hour, it takes several seconds for the different platforms to catch up. And there's a buffer on each one of these platforms. So I do appreciate your patience in that regard. I'm Andrew Beach. If you don't know me, I'm a teacher of self-education. I help professionals like you communicate their value to find great opportunities faster. That's whether you're working or not. I do that through a pragmatic process of branding, planning, and effective networking. If you're joining here for the first time, please consider this a learning opportunity. For those of you who've been here for a while, you likely remember that we share our LinkedIn profiles in the chat regardless of the platform we're joining from. So if that's you, please, by all means, place your LinkedIn profile in the chat. And I would be happy to let everybody know that when you do that, what you're admitting to everybody is that you're open to conversation. You're open to connecting with people. And that's what matters, isn't it? This whole platform called LinkedIn and job search is revolving around networking. And what better way to network than to actually make this process easy? I really appreciate the fact that many of you show up here every week, that you provide things. Good. I appreciate that, Terry. Good to see you. That provide me a reason to be here. And that means if you have any questions at all, please put those in the chat box. You can do that, absolutely. So there are opportunities here for you to put a question in the chat. I'm happy to answer. I'm here to address any concerns that you have regarding career. That could cover what? Well, that could cover online search, interviewing, networking, how to do that effectively. Maybe you have some challenges with ageism. This never happened to me. I've never been discriminated because of my, race, color, creed, age, whatever. That's never happened. And in a perfect world, it probably never will. But I know in the real world, all of us face certain biases in the marketplace. So if there's something that you want to talk about, please put the question in the chat. Happy to answer. On top of that, I will put in the description for this video and in the chat a link that you can access. Let me see here, add people. There we go. I'm going to copy this link into the chat box. And if you want to come on live, you can absolutely do so. You and I will have a conversation live, one-on-one, and you'll be able to get some free, I repeat, free coaching on whatever you feel is what you're looking for. Let me make sure that I've got this. Yeah, look, it's in the description as well. So that's there. Good. We're streaming today on LinkedIn, Periscope, Facebook, and YouTube all at once. That means many people who come on this session live actually get exposure. They get more exposure, let's say, than if they were just joining and lurking, if you will, on the sidelines. Both are valuable, absolutely. I don't have much on my mind this week other than, spring is here. I think spring is an opportunity for new beginnings. We talked about this before. I think people are a lot happier in many areas. The weather is starting to get nice. People are thinking more about being outside and being accessible. The vaccine's now been on the scene for several months now. A lot of people are being vaccinated. People are fatigued, maybe over fatigued, and ready for community. Ready for community. What I'm seeing is a lot of companies are starting to talk about going back to work. And I think there's, we mentioned this when people went to work from home, is that many of them were not accessible when we first decided to do, lockdowns and all this, and people were working from home. They just didn't want to talk to anybody. They're just trying to get their feet under them, trying to understand how to maybe homeschool, how to manage the schedule, and how to interact with people and how to stay connected when you're distant. Now they kind of got that into a rhythm, right? They're actually kind of maybe enjoying working from home and hoping this will continue. And now the kids are starting to go, at least in our area, back to school in a limited capacity. So now it's like, okay, I kind of get the feeling we're at a tipping point again, that people are going to be unavailable. Why? Because now they're managing change once more. There's a disruption. They're starting to go back to work. They're starting to get the kids back to school. And all of a sudden, boom, summer hits. Okay. And then, okay, so they're not available now. They're not available early summer. Now I'm looking at September, October before I can get a networking meeting put together. Why? Because people are going to be in disruption. So there's this short, but profitable, I think, window between now and the middle of June where you could get your network meetings dialed in, meet people, have productive conversations, and potentially get hired. That said, I also think that there's been a lot of money, just on a separate topic with the, I don't know if you call it bailout or they called it stimulus or infrastructure plan, whatever you want to call it. What that will do is that will infuse capital into the marketplace. And I can see that only doing positive things for the job market in the short run. Long run, it remains to be seen how that's going to play out. But that said, I believe that there's going to be a lot of opportunity in the short run, and we should take advantage of it. Absolutely. So if you have any questions, go ahead and put those in the chat. I appreciate everybody putting their LinkedIn profile in the chat. What you're suggesting there is that people should and can reach out to you, and you will say yes when they do so to a conversation. And so that's for people in this community. This is a community. I'm not here just for me. I'm here to add value and give people support and do what I can to answer your questions and get you from where you are to a placement. That's my goal. That's my objective. It's the same objective. You know, it's funny enough. There's an organization that I facilitated, led for a number of years called the Breakfast Club. Now, we're not taking anybody's trademarked information or name, but it was just called the Breakfast Club. It was a local group here in Portland that I facilitated that helped executives get back to work. And, you know, I start thinking back at how much that, how that was attended, and it was well attended. And so when we came back, I handed that group off to somebody else, a group of other people, shared moderation, and the group kind of dwindled off. And then we tried to reestablish that same group again here in probably a couple, 3 years ago. We put it up on Eventbrite. We made sure it was open and available for everybody. We met in kind of what might be considered obscure locations. The one location I thought that was similar to or close enough to where we had it before was in a mall. So it was a mall space that had an open public area. You know, for lack of a better phrase, there were people, mall walkers in there at 7 o'clock in the morning, and we met early. And we met really early. I mean, in the scheme of things, when you're out of work, you know, I'm not going to point fingers or anything, but I certainly wasn't the type that was up and at them at 0500 and getting everything rolling. No, it'd be 7, 8, 9 o'clock. I would roll out of the rack and get my day started. And so we, as a accountability tool, decided to have these different meetings at 7:30 in the morning. Yes. That means that anybody who is a job-seeking professional that wanted to participate probably had to get up 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, get prepared, and drive to a location that sometimes was distant from them. We had people attend regularly as far away as Medford. That's how far our reach was. And they showed up every 2 weeks from Medford. Yes, this is a true story. And it offered accountability for people. What I found is when I instilled an early meeting and we were disciplined about our execution and we asked people for commitments, a couple things happened. One, people stopped coming because they didn't appreciate it because it was too tough. It was hard. It was, and as hard as I worked to be nice, I also tried to be honest. And the honest answer was the more that you have accountability in this process, the faster you will be placed. That's a fact. The more you have external accountability, someone holding your, proverbially feet to the fire. I'm not suggesting they need to be a jerk or, and the backside of a donkey, but you know what I mean? It's important that we all have some measure of accountability. And the stronger the accountability, the faster the results. That's been my experience. The higher the pain, the greater the gain. And when it comes to accountability, I'm actually, which is funny. You would think I would be positively motivated to find something. I'm not. I'm the exact opposite. I actually only do things when there's a negative consequence that can be painful. And I think many of us are kind of on that spectrum between pleasure and pain, where, hey, I know this is going to provide positive outcome, and that would be nice, but actually I'm more motivated by the actual hurt or the pain. Anyhow, looks like we have a question here. Thank you for that. Again, if you have any questions, please, you can feel free to put those in the chat. Just put in there anything related to career that you have a question about. So this one says LinkedIn user, so I'm not quite sure who it is. Looks like it might be Yasmin Liu. What do you suggest when an online application requires a salary amount? It will not accept a range of words, only a number. Otherwise, you can't complete the application. I'm going to leave that up to the team. Okay, the people that are here, the community that is here, I want you to tell me, what would I say to this person? What would I say as a response to this kind of question? I'm sure that I know that Terry's here. Yeah, Terry's here. I know Terry would have an answer. But I'm the type of person, and this will probably show up in the chat, there's not a big believer in online applications. I know it's a shock to some of you, and some of you not so much a shock. I'm not saying you shouldn't do them. What I'm suggesting is that I think we all realize that the return on that investment is not very high. And if there is an amount there, and it's a, how would you say it? A forced field, that says a lot. That says a lot about the company that's actually, so Terry's advice is $0 or $1 in the past. Yeah. So it says a lot about the company that's actually approaching you and their talent acquisition function. It doesn't tell you anything about their operation, their philosophies, their mission, vision, and values. There's a lot that's left out of an application process that helps you understand whether or not that company is for you. Whether or not that company is for you. Now, that's up to you. You decide what's for you. The challenge is when you're looking at a company from the outside in, and all you have to go on is the job description and an application process, you don't really know much about that company on the surface unless you've already worked there or you already know people there, okay? Now, what does that mean? That means that you should be cautious and find additional creative ways to get to the right people in the operation in which you intend to work. So yes, it does. You're absolutely right, Terry. It does tell you a lot about their approach in talent acquisition. It doesn't tell you always about the business. And I recognize that some companies have it together and all their business units work together. It isn't always that way. Now, the advocacy I would have for you is, yes, put a number in there that you think is fair, that's maybe above your minimum. And if you want to take Terry's advice and use a 0 or a 1, go ahead and try it. You have nothing to lose and everything to gain. Why? Because we recognize that process, front door to interview, is one, let's say slate of candidates, probably 6 to 10, maybe 15. Okay, say let's 15. How many applicants do you think they have? Let's say 200. So you would be 15 at best out of 200. That's being liberal with the numbers. What percentage is that? Let's see, 15 out of 200. 0.075%. Or excuse me, times 100. 7.5%. 7.5%. So the best you could expect, even if you were the perfect candidate, right? and you hit all the numbers and you put in the right number in that salary field, your best percentage to get an interview is 7.5%. Let's assume at 200 applicants, 15 people get interviewed. Okay, initially. That doesn't mean you make it to the finals or you get an onsite. That means you get a chance to be screened by HR. 7.5%. So we do that process and cross our fingers, but we don't stop. We take an extra step. We call somebody we know at the company. We call somebody we know who knows somebody at the company. We direct outreach on LinkedIn. It doesn't stop ever until they get a restraining order on you. I'm saying that jokingly, of course, but the idea is don't let the application process stop you. We're not paid by how many applications we put in. We're paid by how well we perform on an interview. That is the key performance indicator, is the quality of interview. Good questions. Let's see. It looks like we got another one here from Patrick. Thank you, Patrick. Welcome. If you haven't yet, go ahead and put your LinkedIn profile in the chat. That's signaling to everybody here that you're open to networking and having those conversations. And I encourage everybody who has done so to reach out to people that have done it as well. So here's the question. I get interviewed in cybersecurity, but either they don't get back to me. Last interviewer promised getting back to me in a week, but it's been 2 months. Again, was a couple of things to remember, Patrick, and this may or may not be helpful to you, but it's a mindset that I and the people I coach have created. And that mindset is, number one, you don't control the company. You don't control their process. You don't control their formulation of requisitions. You don't control their budget. You don't control how long it takes somebody to get back to you on an interview. You don't control any of that. What do you control? You control your daily activities. So what do I suggest to people? Yes, I've been interviewed and they didn't get back to me. It happens. 2 weeks, the last time I interviewed, which wasn't actually technically too long ago, somebody, I found an opportunity that was looking pretty good for me, so I went after it. But I won't get into that. But the idea is, I expected a callback or some sort of communication. Took 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Just for somebody to get back to me and give me a status report. 2 weeks. Now, many companies, of course, there's always an exception, take somewhere in the neighborhood of 45 days to onboard a candidate. That's interview, offer, background checks, all that, right? All the stuff that takes to bring somebody in, interview them, make a decision, offer, and get them onboarded, 45 days. So 2 months is not out of bounds. 2 months is only 2 weeks additional to 45 days. So 8 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, it's pretty close. What I would advocate is that you find people inside the company to have conversations with outside of this interviewer. So if the interviewer was talent acquisition HR, follow up with somebody in the operation. If it was somebody in the operation, follow up with HR. If neither of those respond, go to the next door. If this is a company you really want to work for and you feel like they have it going on and maybe they're just busy or overworked and don't have enough resources, just keep knocking on the door. There's nothing that says you can't follow up with them and just kind of give a nudge. So if there's any other questions you have on that, Patrick, I'm happy to answer. But that, I'm not going to make a judgment on that company. I'm going to make a judgment on maybe the person that made a promise that they didn't keep. But that's not going to allow me to jade my opinion on the company or that opportunity, or maybe the other members of the hiring team that understand it a little bit better. Good. Good. Looks like, I think this is Yasmin again. I have been lucky with online applications and been hired for 4 jobs. So the question is, if you've been hired for 4 jobs from online applications, why is it that you're looking? Because it seems like, to me, if that was a super effective method, there would have been a really good match. There would have been, all of your requirements would have been met. They would have had similarities with you in terms of mission, vision, values. And so the challenge is sometimes we make these 4 applications. We've been lucky. We get a job and we're grateful. Yay. And then there's a mismatch on culture. There's a mismatch on how this leader treats you. And you either leave or they fire you because, anyway, I've been in all those circumstances. So the challenge that we have with online applications, not that they don't work, is that when you get to the interview, if you don't know that hiring team, and you don't know how they operate or what they're like, then you're coming in there. And when you interview, unfortunately, it is what it is. They're putting up the varnished self. They want you to like them. Why? So that you'll say yes. In fact, they do that with every candidate. They want to have the opportunity to pick the best one. And so therefore, with every candidate, they put their best foot forward. They're trying to sell the company and sell the role and get you to say yes if it turns out you're the ideal candidate. Therefore, you're not getting the entire truth, is what I'm suggesting, is you only get part truth. And not that that's bad. It's just not as organic. It's not as organic and it's not as revealing as if you came into that situation, you had networked into it, maybe you knew people on the inside and you were comfortable with their mission, vision, and values, and you knew the standard operating procedures and you felt really comfortable that this is the right place for you. So my suspicion is if you've applied, and I see that was pre-pandemic, and you got hired for 4 jobs, okay, were the offers acceptable to you? And did you just take the offer they gave you, or did you say no to some of those? So I know that's 4 jobs. My suspicion is when they came in and you applied and you interviewed and they offered, you just said yes. Did you negotiate anything? So that's just, you don't have to put that in there. But as a coach, I start thinking through these things. How satisfied were you with those 4 jobs? And if it was pre-pandemic, that may have been your experience then, but is it your experience now? And it may not. It may not. So there's a lot that we can uncover there. If you want to come on live, you can. It looks like Craig has some advice for you. Do some research. Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of resources out there. LinkedIn has a salary tool. Glassdoor has salary tools. I'm sure Indeed does as well. There's salary.com, payscale.com, ownetonline.org, right? There's not any lack of information, resources available for you to know what do people with this title and this geography at this level, what do they do? It's actually an interesting process to go through and calculate. I was fortunate when I interviewed for this role recently. It was a newly established role and they didn't have a pay scale on it. So, I mean, it was open. And the research that I did was actually very valuable because it helped them realize, wow, we need to go back to the drawing board. We need to look at potentially expanding the budget if we want to get somebody in this space into this role. And I think what happened is they decided to restructure the actual title and go a different direction. So I helped them through that process. And I feel good about that because I got exposure to a group of leaders that I wanted to be exposed to in that way. So good. Let's see, post pandemic. Yeah. Any other questions? Put those in the chat. Happy to answer. Let me get over here and put that up. Now you also can see in the description, regardless of where you're joining, the description should have a link there. If you want to come on live and you want more hands-on with me, we can do that. Absolutely. We can do hands-on coaching. We can answer your questions on the fly. Also, it would be helpful to me and to others in this community if we could spread the word. All I ask, I don't ever ask for much. In fact, I hardly ever ask for anything. But right down below, what you'll see is a share button. If you look down below, you see a share. Just share out this broadcast with your network. Maybe we can get some more people in here, some fresh blood, if you will, and we can expand our reach. Because that's the point of networking, isn't it? Isn't it the point of networking is to meet people, have conversations, and go that direction? Absolutely. Absolutely. That's what it's all about. And this group exists to simply make that a reality. Make a reality. Good. So let's see what's in LinkedIn news here. More McDonald's exit Walmart. Interesting. So McDonald's is exiting Walmart. Some workers are paid to take PTO. That's interesting. So isn't PTO paid time off? I mean, shouldn't they be paid? Are they paid and then bonused? Anyway, that's interesting. LinkedIn responds to, okay, so here's some big deal. I just saw this the other day. Information from 500 million LinkedIn profiles was for sale online by hackers, according to CNN. Let's see what LinkedIn, this is LinkedIn's response here. Let's see what it says. LinkedIn, in a statement that the data involved is an aggregation from a number of websites and companies that includes publicly viewable information. LinkedIn says there was no data breach, and based on the company's review, no private member account data was included. The news comes on the heels of a scraping incident at Facebook, though the company says it is confident that the specific issue that let hackers scrape their data in 2019 no longer exists. So I think, it's so funny and so timely. It wasn't, but I think 6 or 7 weeks ago, maybe, we talked about safety online. And when we're talking LinkedIn specifically, if we're talking about our accounts, there's 2 things I suggest you do immediately. One, if you have not activated two-factor authentication, do that today. If you can do that with a mobile authenticator app like Google Authenticator, I think Microsoft got one too. That's what I prefer. Second thing, I would not have my personal private email, the one that I use for my banking and brokerage accounts. I would not have that on LinkedIn anywhere. I would remove that. Would not have that anywhere on here. Okay. Third thing, if you have your cell number on LinkedIn, I would think twice about putting it there. I would instead leverage the Google ecosystem and create for yourself a Google Voice number. It can, of course, it can ring through to your cell phone. But here's what you've done by doing that. One, if you're using two-factor authentication through your cell phone, nobody can spoof that number and take your two-factor authentication. That's huge. Second, you give yourself a layer of privacy when you're making phone calls and such that people won't have your cell number that way. So there's a lot to be gained. So look up Google Voice and also have a career-focused email and remove your personal email from LinkedIn. That's my advice to you, and it's free for what it's worth. So that when these kind of scraping incidents happen, because there are bots that can get that information, and if you give your profile access to your profile to a third-party bot, don't you think they're going to download all your contacts, all of your connections, all of your information? Of course they are. Of course they are. And why wouldn't they? It's something that they would sell like this on the open market. And the funny thing is, there's actually, hang on a second. Let's get that tuned up a little bit. Maybe it's that one. Is that better? Doesn't look to be better. Anyhow, I guess what I'm suggesting here is take advantage of some of the tools and free things that you have to protect yourself. Absolutely. Good. Have a great weekend. Be safe, secure. That's just something that's current and relevant on LinkedIn. Let's see what else we got. Oh, Prince Philip passed. That's right. Dies at age 99. He's 5 years senior to Queen Elizabeth. So she's, I think, 94, 95, something like that. So he's passed. Boeing 737 MAX has a new problem. Boy, poor Boeing. The hidden power of ambiverts. That's interesting. So one of my colleagues, Scott Picard-Jones, the gentleman that I do the podcast with, has said he's an ambivert. And so let's see what that is. Ambivert. While it sometimes appears that extroverts make better leaders, research has shown that ambiverts, those who have qualities of both introverts and extroverts, I guess that would include me because I consider myself an introvert, most equipped to succeed. Leadership requires moments of listening and reflection along with moments of enthusiasm and boldness. But how do you develop both qualities at once? A report in BBC Work Life says knowing where you fall on the spectrum is key than taking steps to become more of the other. Also, finding a role model to mimic can help you improve your weaker side. All good stuff. So what I take away from that is being versatile. So it's called ambivert, but really versatility. Work on your versatility. If you're not really good at listening, do some active listening drills, right? One of the things I've gotten better at doing is repeating what people say and making sure that's exactly what they meant. Because sometimes that's not true. That's how you demonstrate active learning. I think what you said is this what you're trying to communicate? I think what you mean is, right? So you then repeat back to them what they said. That's an active listening technique. Another one is taking notes. Whenever you write down notes, take notes. That's an active listening technique. Perfectly valid. But maybe I should go and see what this article says here. Work life, BBC Work Life. Blending both introvert, extrovert. Oh yeah, it's a pretty long article. Why self-promotion doesn't have to be taboo. Actually, there's some good ones here. I might actually sign up for this little, this little thing. So I'll put it in the chat box here on LinkedIn. Looks like it went right to the, that's weird. Sorry, everybody. Just trying to get back to the stream so I can put it into the chat for y'all. It's a really interesting article. It has a lot of good content on it. Looks workable. So I'll put that in the chat as well. So you can have a peek see. Peek see. It just means have a look. So let me do this in a new tab so I can keep that open. What else is on your mind? Put your questions in the chat. Happy to answer. Let's see. Prince Philip, Boeing. Jobless claims tick up. Yeah, I mean, this is just kind of the seasonal nature of employment. It always happens. You know, it's funny. They run in 90-day cycles. You can almost set your watch to it. So when are there going to be jobless claims? After an earnings announcement. January, February, March. When does that come? 1st of April. April, May, June. When does that come? 1st of July. July, August, September. When does that come? 1st of October. Right? You can set your watch to it. It's clear. It goes like this every quarter. 90-day cycles, give or take. Okay. So it says here, first-time unemployment claims ticked up last week, totaling 744,000, which was higher than the 694 that they anticipated, 50,000 higher. And up from last week's 728. Labor Department data also shows continuing claims decreasing to their lowest level since late March, right after the pandemic took hold. The latest numbers come on the heels of clear signs of healing in the labor market as non-farm payrolls jumped 916,000 in March, and the unemployment rate dipped to 6%. Still twice that, I think, of the low we had prior pandemic. Job openings hit a 2-year high in February, led by food services and healthcare jobs. Does that surprise anybody? Of course not, because food service was one of the first things that was locked down and closed up. People could only do takeout. And so people started, ordering more, Uber Eats and all that. And so think about this as an ascension and a descension, meaning, hey, as we ascend, some of these companies are in demand. As they descend, guess what? They won't be. And something else will come in to take its place. So think a little creatively. When some of these industries descend, what does that mean? That means that others will ascend. The ones that maybe you were interested in helping you, or that you were interested in focusing on, that will be something to consider for sure. Good. Any other questions out there that I can help answer? Or if you want to, you can certainly come on live. There's a link in the description. I'm happy Yasmin or I think Terry took off. Who else is here? Yasmin or Scott or Liad, Craig, Leif. So good. I think according to LinkedIn, we currently have 10 people here. So We had 11 before. I think Terry left, but anyway. Good. If you don't have any questions, I think I made my contributions and we talked through some of the news. You can certainly also get that same news on the LinkedIn homepage. So it's not like I'm giving you anything you don't already know about. Amazon workers vote against unions. Do nothing for your brain's sake. Oh, that's interesting. Let's see what it says about doing nothing for your brain's sake. Doing nothing does a lot for your brain. Okay. Neuroscience research suggests that giving your brain a timeout can support productivity and long-term learning, according to the Wall Street Journal. But even as you rest, your brain may still be working. To fully shut down, you can incorporate these resting strategies into your routine. Take a walk. That's great advice. Take a walk. Move your body. Don't get fixated on your number of steps. Play a game, but don't keep score. Cook a meal without worrying about making a culinary masterpiece. I did that right before this session. It wasn't a culinary masterpiece. It was leftovers from Sunday supper last Sunday and some vegetables, some steamed vegetables. It wasn't anything exciting. Good. So that's all in the LinkedIn news. I don't have anything else to share today. So unless you have some questions or want to come on live to do some coaching, then I will sign off. Let's see. Okay. Thank you, Craig, for bringing us a question. Negotiating compensation, I have been moved to the final step in the interview process. Congratulations, Craig. You're on the path to success. The presentation, if offered the position, is it expected in a sales role to negotiate? Any tips or suggestions? Yes. Man, you're in sales. Why would you not negotiate? And maybe that's not related to salary. Maybe their salary and commission structure is set. That's okay. What about vacation days? What about a car allowance? What about if you're traveling? What about a I don't know, being able to go to the VIP lounge for a certain airline, that sort of thing. There's a lot of things you can negotiate. The question is, if you've had that discussion in advance and you both agreed on some parameters for the offer, then you go with that. Absolutely go with that. But if they sent you an offer and you had no prior discussions, then yes, you ought to negotiate. There ought to be something there that you have a question about or that isn't what you imagined it to be. And listing all of those things on a sheet of paper, compensation, commission structure, bonuses, time off, healthcare, you know what I mean? Healthcare insurance, it's becoming a larger and larger percentage of people's compensation. Even though it's non-cash, it is a benefit that leads to more cash in my pocket. You might look at auto allowance or company car. You might look at, like I said, the and just jot all these things down that are important to you. And you can certainly Google search a list of negotiable items, and they're out there. Maybe it's a signing bonus, something of that nature. But I mean, all it does, if you negotiate, is affirms the hiring team's decision to hire you on, especially when we're talking sales. Why? Because you're comfortable with uncomfortable conversations. Absolutely. You're comfortable with uncomfortable conversations. I would expect you to negotiate unless you established your parameters and your desires, your requirements in advance, right? In advance of the offer, not prior to offer or interview, not prior to interview, but certainly between the interview and the time that they're talking about offering you. Did you have any preliminary conversations? And that's what I'd let guide the process, and stick with what you agreed to and negotiate something else. But I wouldn't be surprising, right? The challenge is to do this in a way that's endearing and supportive and collaborative rather than divisive. And so the approach really matters. There's a lot of question marks in there. So that may be something that we talk about offline if you want to. It's a little more sensitive when we start getting into contract negotiations. So, all right, everybody. I've got nothing else to share today. And just remember, you will be successful. Those people that are successful stay in the game. Those people that stay in the game get the opportunities, and those people get the opportunities have a chance to say yes. Give yourself a chance to say yes. Stay in the game. Keep going. Advocate for your happiness. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay to say no. In fact, that may be the hardest thing for some people to say is no. If it's not for you and it doesn't feel right and there isn't quite the alignment, then you probably should say no. Probably should say no. Good. All right, folks. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next Friday. Remember, we're here every Friday, 3 p.m. Pacific time, and we are an open community. This is free career coaching for you and anybody you know. If you could, please share this out with people you know. Spread the word. We want to get critical mass for this community. And I love seeing the same people here week after week, but truthfully, the only way to make this thing effective for everybody is to spread the word and get more people involved. Okay. All right, folks, take care, be well, stay safe, wash your hands, wear a mask. We'll get through this just fine.